Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Neil Trevitt, Vice President of Developer Ecosystems at NVIDIA and President of the Khronos Group. Khronos is a non-profit consortium creating open, royalty-free interoperability standards for 3D graphics, virtual and augmented reality, and parallel computation. Khronos and its 160 member companies strongly believe in the power of open standards to grow market opportunities for everyone. And over the next hour, Khronos members from the 3D graphics and retail industries will share their vision for the 3D everywhere revolution, including Khronos' latest initiatives to grow widespread use of 3D graphics across e-commerce and beyond. And here is today's order of events. We will start with a demonstration of how Khronos is already making the use of compelling 3D graphics widely accessible through its GLTF open standard 3D file format. Then we will give a sneak peek at the announcement of the Khronos 3D Commerce Viewer Certification Program that will ensure that 3D products are reliably displayed everywhere. And that announcement will be going live at 6 a.m. Pacific time on June 9th. After that, we will have a roundtable discussion on what is next for the widespread use of 3D in e-commerce and beyond, and we will finish up with a Q&A session, so get your questions ready. Before the demonstration, let me just start with the origin story for our work at Khronos to enable 3D everywhere. Almost 10 years ago, we realized that all the major media types, including images, audio, and video, had formats designed for efficient and compact distribution, except 3D. We saw these efficient transmission formats were creating significant market opportunities by enabling widespread downloads and social sharing of rich media files over the web, while 3D was missing out by only being used in local native applications such as design tools and games. So Khronos designed the GLTF 3D asset format that was both compact and easy to process so that 3D models could be easily transported and used wherever they are needed. GLTF is flexible. It can describe any 3D model from single objects to full scenes with animation. And it is also a pure asset format. And that means it can be used by any type of software that uses 3D, including on the web and in social applications. And when Khronos released GLTF version 2.0 in 2015, it included an enhanced set of physically based materials that were both visually realistic and could be accurately rendered everywhere. This hit a sweet spot need in the industry, and GLTF adoption expanded rapidly as companies realized the efficiency and cost savings of having 3D tools, apps, and engines that could easily pass 3D models between each other. The companies here have all implemented GLTF support, both tools that generate GLTF assets and engines and applications that can ingest those GLTF models. But in the vertical market segment of 3D in e-commerce, and we call that 3D commerce, something was wrong. Despite GLTF being available and companies such as IKEA using augmented reality on mobile devices to give virtual furniture previews from as early as 2013, and pilot programs showing that 3D was effective at driving customer engagement and increased sales, use of 3D in e-commerce was still not widespread. Then, in 2019, a group of retail companies approached Khronos to form the 3D Commerce Working Group to combine their retail insights with the deep 3D engineering expertise at Khronos. The 3D Commerce Working Group quickly realized that the barrier to deploying 3D at industrial scale was the process friction of hundreds of companies trying to cooperate over the design, manufacture, and presentation of thousands of products across multiple platforms. This is a classic class of problem that industry cooperation and standardization can help solve, and 3D Commerce quickly got to work. Firstly, the industry experts at 3D Commerce created a series of GLTF extensions for more effective 3D model deployment in e-commerce, including metadata for integration into enterprise-level asset management systems, and carefully raising the bar of visual realism for materials that can be rendered everywhere, including on mobile devices and in the web. 3D Commerce then released a set of asset creation guidelines containing best practices to help 3D artists and tools vendors understand how to create 3D assets that can be reliably and easily deployed to millions of customers. And finally, today, on the next step of this 10-year journey, we are announcing the launch of the 3D Commerce Viewer Certification Program. 3D viewers are software engines that enable users to display and interact with 3D models and scenes. Viewers used in 3D commerce are built by both retailers and non-retailers, and they are sometimes open source. These 3D commerce viewers are then used by retailers, social media sites, and brands to create a wide variety of 3D end user experiences on the web, in social media, on ad platforms, as well as in native applications. This certification program will help ensure that all these 3D viewers being built across the industry can accurately and reliably display 3D products across multiple platforms and devices. This is the next vital step in enabling the trusted use of 3D everywhere. But that's enough talk. Let's see some of this technology in action. I am delighted to introduce Sandra Volker, a 3D technical artist at Target with 26 years of experience and who is working at Khronos to enable visually accurate and compelling products using GLTF. Over to you, Sandra.
Hi, thanks, Neil. I'm excited to be here talking to you today. I have a lot of great things to show, so let's just dive right in. I can't tell you how many times I've heard 3D is hard. For too long, the only way to generate 3D was through complex authoring software that created large, bloated files and needed specialized, expensive hardware to run. I've built a career about empowering creatives by making 3D easier and accessible. Khronos Group shares those same goals. They are a powerful partner that believes by working together, we can create a global solution that will propel 3D adoption forward, bringing it to new and exciting places. They have worked hard and come up a long way to make that happen. But let me show you some of that progress live and on the web. What you see here is a demonstration all done by flipping tabs in Chrome on my basic Dell desktop. There's no complex computer. It's a simple, accessible viewer, easy for all to see and manipulate. So you guys can just try this at home. There's information on your press kit and how you can do this all yourself. Let's get started. So this first model represents maybe the early days in 2015 with the first release of GLTF 1.0. But quickly they started pushing models further with more complex textures, shapes, and even animation. It was clear that there was excitement building and we needed to keep, moving forward. Just a year and a half later, in June of 2017, they released GLTF version 2.0. This was a huge leap forward in realism and visual potential. The model you're seeing here has environment lighting, reflections, metallic effects, subtle shadows. It really brings out the realism. As more creative professionals started getting involved, we started seeing amazing things with this technology. Leather, metals, woods, plastic, things took off. Now you can bring entire spaces to life. But the world is full of so many different kinds of surfaces. We are continuing to push forward, unlocking more and more with each update. Some of the newest functionality includes the ability to add that extra shine and polish, like this clear coat finish on a car. The ability to give things that soft, warm, and fuzzy feeling, like this velvet fabric. Or the ability to see through surfaces, like these windows. Or even turn a ceramic dragon into a colorful crystalline one with thickness and volume. Each added feature opened up more creative potential and new ways to view and capture that potential. This variant feature provides unlimited material states on a single model, exploring new design concepts without ever having to look away from the ball. or the shoe. What's coming next? Phase 3 is in development, and that includes advanced materials like iridescent fabric, light scattering effects, specialized highlights, and more. GLTF is an invaluable tool in our 3D visualization tool chest. It allows creatives to recreate reality and making amazing things in unexpected ways, bringing 3D to life. My job in empowering designers is so they can make beautiful products visualized in 3D, but those products have to be powerful and inspiring, and the 3D accessible and simple. GLTF is the format that's making that happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. That was awesome. We can see that GLTF is enabling huge advances in 3D assets with compelling visual realism that can be rendered everywhere, not just on high-end workstations and supercomputers, but on your mobile phone and in your web browser. But that brings us to today's announcement. How can we ensure that diverse end-user devices and applications display these carefully constructed assets accurately and consistently? To answer that question, I am happy to welcome Martin Enthed from IKEA and Khronos Vice President, together with Ashley Miller from Amazon and Leonard Daly, who are co-chairs of the 3D Commerce Viewer Certification Project, to give you more details.
Thank you, Neil, for that background, and Sandra for those really nice examples of what's possible to do now. We will now talk about certification, and with me here I have Ashley, who is Program Manager for Amazon Imaging with a background as a 3D generalist, and Leonard, who is an independent consultant specializing in 3D spatial system and extended reality. And then you have me, Martin, and I'm an innovation manager at IKEA with a 30-year passion in all aspects of 3D and spatial computing. My work for IKEA the last 14 years has been building up our capabilities to use 3D and computer graphics to meet our customers in the best and most optimal way, also using real-time 3D. We joined Khronos 4 years ago to contribute with all other members to reach that goal. When a retailer like us use 3D models of products towards the customers expect them to look the same wherever they show up. This is actually a problem in the current world of real-time 3D viewers and file formats, both on the web and on smartphones, because it does not really look the same. My view is that this should be possible to have a consistent viewing experience of 3D content, and it should also be available for anyone to create that, so we can meet more people everywhere with good 3D enabled content. At IKEA, we want to transfer information over to our customers, and I passionately believe that 3D content is far superior in telling a story and transferring knowledge, as 3D is more made for humans than 2D images on a screen. So Ashley, what are yours and Amazon's thoughts around this?
I completely agree with what you said, Martin. I think that you did a really great job of summing that up. And something that I would add is that the certification program isn't just about the end customer experience. It really assists us at every process that has to do with that final 3D customer experience. So I really encourage people who are involved with 3D content creation to think about the viewer and the viewer's settings as just as much of a part of the output as things like the artist's controlled elements, the geometry and the texture. When somebody goes to author an asset, if the viewer is inconsistent, it's not going to show up as expected. But when artists author assets to a certified viewer, any kinds of QA checks happen in a certified viewer, and then the end customer experience where the model is displayed is also at the certified standard. We know that we're going to have consistency and give the best possible information to that end customer, whether they're using a smartphone, a tablet, a computer screen. They should be able to see the output that we intended for them to see.
And now you've heard us, the retailers, and how we see the problem and the possibilities. So Leonard, can you explain what Khronos and 3D Commerce have been doing to take the first steps to solve this?
Well, Khronos, to the 3D Commerce Working Group, has taken a number of steps from content creation to model viewing to define a consistent process for use and display of 3D retail models. Today, we will address how the certification program works to achieve consistency of the viewing experience across all devices and viewers. So first, we need to define what a viewer is, so we have a common understanding and can use the same terms. A viewer is a software application that displays 3D GLTF models and has a user interface. The user interface is an important component because we're not just checking the base libraries necessary to make things work. The viewer runs in a browser or natively, such as a phone app, and may be open source or proprietary. Khronos designed the program to be as widely used as possible. We created 5 retail product models, shown here, using the asset creation guidelines that exercise GLTF features necessary for the display of retail objects. Baseline renderings were created that candidate viewers needed to match.
We're not just looking for the model itself to display and render as well. Of course, we're looking for that, but there are specific attributes that the viewer controls about the display of this render that we're specifically interested in the certification program. One being the way that lighting calculates. You can see in this image that 3 different lighting environments applied to the same model can drastically affect the display output. But it's not just what lighting you import, it's also how the viewer calculates that lighting that can have a great effect on color and other properties of the model. We're also going to check the way that color management runs in the viewer. So as you can see with this image of a chair, in the same exact scene with the same lighting, these different color management methods really drastically affect the output, which color in particular is something that's really important to customers when they're shopping. Material properties are also really important and something that we've seen be quite varied throughout kind of the larger community of viewers. So you can see where roughness on this model was handled very different in 2 different viewers, where it looks really shiny on the left and then much rougher on the right, which when somebody is shopping for something, this could indicate a lot to them about the aesthetic quality of the object. And we'll also look for just some general features that are necessary in order to display common commerce objects, transparency being able to run in the viewer, texture transform and multiple UV spaces, things that as we've talked to retailers who have content they've let us know are important to them and that are commonly used in models across the industry now. When we build assets and create assets in this larger 3D certified ecosystem, we ensure that at every step of the creation process, things are consistent, that everybody knows what they're targeting. The program takes into account the authoring of assets, which may be manual, scanned, or some combination of those things, and we want those assets to be able to display beside one another and feel cohesive. And we want different content creators to be able to share their assets and have those beside each other and with a relative visual parity. And so this allows content creators to focus on making their content, CX creators to focus on creating their CX, and then all of those things should be relatively harmonious as a larger 3D ecosystem.
So how does this certification program work?
So today, Khronos is announcing the availability of the 3D Commerce Viewer Certification Program. The certification process is not complex. It's for viewers that can display 3D models in either a web browser or natively in app. It works for all devices and all viewers from the company. It is a subscription program. You are allowed to submit as many times or as few times as you wish during the active subscription. Viewer certification lasts the lifetime of the viewer and are displayed in a public registry. Subscriptions are $2,500 for 12 months with discounts for Khronos members. When a viewer has completed the certification, They are eligible to display the certification mark.
So once a viewer is certified, who would the certification be important for?
So certification is important to both content creators and retail organizations that want to display that content. I want to look for a certified viewer to utilize if I want to create assets so that I know that I'm creating them to the right spec to interact with the larger ecosystem. If I want to purchase assets, I want them to be created with a certified viewer. And if I want to create a customer experience, I want to create that using the certified standard as well. Because then I know that any asset that I place in it that is made within this sort of larger program, or any asset that I send anywhere to be rendered, that I can expect relative parity and that I can accurately display for customers a representation of the product that they're about to purchase.
Okay, so Leonard and Ashley, what does this mean for all of us that want to view 3D models of things on web, mobile, for shopping, education, art, or entertainment?
For web-based shopping, it is frequently the case that what you see is not what you get. Retailers that use certified viewers increase customer understanding of the product. Khronos is taking the first steps towards making GLTF and certified viewers the JPEG of the 3D web.
As an artist, if I use a certified viewer, I know that my models will be displayed as I intended them. As a retailer, we know that using certified viewers gives us the best opportunity to present information to our customers. And really across the larger industry, if we want to work collaboratively to scale and to create better, more robust 3D experiences, we really need to all work together to one specific spec. So by engaging in certification program, we ensure that our content can really meet anybody, anywhere, on any device or in any location.
So thank you, both Ashley and Leonard. And that was all we had from the certified viewers today. You can learn more and get involved in the program at khronos.org.
So thank you, Martin, Ashley, and Leonard. So as we prepare to publicly launch the certification program on Wednesday, the 3D Commerce Working Group members on this slide right now are already preparing their viewers for certification. It's a great variety of companies with many more to come. And as Leonard mentioned, when certified, these viewers will be displayed on Khronos's certified viewer registry. And a reminder, we're going to finish up the webinar today with a Q&A session. So please go ahead and type any questions you have into the Zoom Q&A tab at any time. I see some already appearing. Thank you, John. And please include your name so we know who asked the question. And now I'm going to hand over to Shrenik Sadagi, Director at Wayfair and Chair of the Khronos 3D Commerce Working Group, who's going to host a roundtable discussion. Over to you, Shrenik.
Thank you, Neil. As the founding chair of 3D Commerce, I'm quite proud of all the work that's been discussed today, especially the viewer certification program. It is going to be critical to let customers experience content in a consistent way, no matter where they're viewing it from. Helping content creators not having to worry about the platforms and focus on the content and the experience only means you're going to have better content and better experiences. I'm excited that we're helping streamline the workflows so people can create content once and use it everywhere. As director of Wayfair Next, Wayfair's Far Future R&D initiative, I see a very promising future for 3D as a merchandising medium and as an information medium. With the evolution of computing platforms, there's no doubt in my mind that 3D is going to be ubiquitous because it is such a rich way to represent information. As humans, we've been perceiving the physical world in 3D, and it's only natural that we start to build and distribute and consume digital information in 3D. We should be leveraging 3D for all kinds of use cases, shopping in particular, which I'm concerned with, but also education, design, manufacturing, medical, and productivity. The 3D Commerce Working Group has spent the past year and a half working alongside others within the Khronos group on some of the problems that have stood in the way of making 3D easy enough to produce, distribute, exchange, and finally for the end user to consume. So to give you some context on these issues that we've dealt with in the past, that we're dealing with in the present, and what we might deal with in the future, I'm joined today by some of my colleagues on 3D commerce. We have Ashley Crowder, who's the CEO of Ventana. Hi, Ashley. We have Brent Scannell, who's the product owner for 3ds Max at Autodesk. Welcome, Brent. We have John Wade, who's the media and AR product manager at Shopify. Hi, John. And we have Nathaniel Hunter, Chief Operating Officer of Dreamview. Hi, Nathaniel. We also have Thomas Lucchini, who is the program manager on Babylon.js at Microsoft. Welcome, Thomas. In addition to their day jobs, they're all active members of the 3D Commerce Working Group. So they're both facing these problems day to day and also working to build standards to solve them. So let's start with a fundamental question. What do we mean by 3D everywhere, and why is everyone talking about 3D now, especially in commerce? Maybe Brent, you can kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Shrenik. So, 3D is not really new now. Most of the, if not all the panelists on this call have been dealing with 3D for most of their professional careers, and probably before that as well. 3D up to date has never really been something that's really been exposed to end customers. It's taken the form of video games where customers can interact with 3D content. In an entertainment context, they get exposed to it through film and TV, sometimes in ways that they don't even know. But over the last 5 years or more, a little bit, customers have been demanding access because of all those points that you mentioned earlier, Shrenik, the richness in communication of design intent, of design details, of product details. And it's starting to filter into the customer expectations for e-commerce. When people buy things now, they don't want to buy it like they did 50 years ago from a Sears catalog. They expect to see 3D content available to them so they can get accurate previews, make good decisions. So everyone's talking about 3D now because of, not because of, but primarily because of this surge in 3D from the e-commerce world, from retailers. I'm sure that some of my panelists here can share a little bit more details about why that boom is really happening right now.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. 3D gives customers such a better understanding of a product that our clients are consistently seeing at double conversion rates on e-commerce, which is massive. Snapchat and Deloitte Digital just released their report that actually Tryon consistently increased conversion rate by 94%, which is massive. And it's not just B2C. We're also seeing brands use 3D to improve their B2B sales, selling to Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom's. Clients like Hugo Boss are using 3D to completely replace physical prototypes with digital, which is saving tens of thousands of dollars, reducing carbon footprint, and increasing speed to market. So, there's huge value to 3D, but there has to be standards and consistency. Clients like Adidas launch 40,000 products a year. You have to have standards and consistency because there's no way to do custom one-off times 40,000.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that requirement, Ashley. As we see 3D proliferate across the different commerce verticals, it's interesting to see that you're no longer kind of working in your own silos, right? You're now beginning to exchange this content between the different industries and between the different verticals. And you take our panel as an example, right? Where each of us probably play a role or maybe touch a specific asset as you think about like creating the content, and as it goes through the different layers of working to make the content better, it exchanges hands between just all of us in here, right? And so if we don't agree on what we want to exchange, it's going to get really tough. So let's talk about some of these problems that are standing in the way of making 3D more pervasive. Thomas, maybe you can help kick us off.
Yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit about some of the technical challenges. I think one of the first one is regarding the asset size compared to images. Basically, 3D assets are quite huge, right? They can be really big, which raises problem of bandwidth, of load time. Recently, a great step has been made with the KTX2. There was an announcement that was released a few weeks ago, I believe, and which enables texture super compression, so which help make things smaller. Visual realism also is another challenge. We haven't reached the point where what you see is exactly what you buy for some materials that are difficult to simulate in real time. Here also, as we've seen, some great progress have been made with some of the latest GLTF extensions, such as Volume, where you can see through thick glass objects. Think about vases or tabletop and glass, things like this. But it's not for today that when we'll be able to basically not tell the difference at all, right? If we think about ray tracing capability, things that can see in movies, where you just don't know, right? You just don't know what's real, what's not real. This will take some time, but it will come. We all know it will come, right? Just a matter of time. And finally, the last one of the last challenges regarding the asset creation themselves. Today, it takes a lot of time. It is still expensive, right, to create all those 3D objects. As techniques get better to automatically scan to understand the world and recreate automatically objects, then we'll reach to another point of a new era, basically, of content that will start floating everywhere.
Yeah, I'd second everything you say, Thomas, and I'd say in addition to all those technical aspects you kind of hinted at the last part there, there's a cost, right, to getting this content made, and one of the not a hard blocker to adoption, but making sure that all the companies, all the merchants out there that might want to use 3D understand that return on investment, right? So one, what is the investment required of me? You don't have to go reinvent your entire merchandising, product development, and marketing pipelines. You can start small with experiments, and so the upfront cost doesn't have to be huge. And then that there's a great return. Ashley quoted that 94% conversion lift we see, across all these companies. You'll find conversion lift metrics, meaning people are adding more to their cart or buying more, as well as lowered returns, because people are seeing the scale and understand the detail of products better. They're more confident, and then when they arrive, they meet those expectations better. So it lowers returns, which is also a significant saver for many businesses.
And just kind of to add to that, what will really be enabling that ROI is having that single source of truth 3D file from design all the way to sales and marketing. So from the apparel industry, we're working with software programs like Browseware and Clo and others to make sure that if you're a brand who's invested all this money in designing in 3D, you can actually use that same 3D file everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of that ROI is future proofing, right? That as new experiences in 3D, AR, VR come to the web, come to new devices like AR and VR headsets, that content you're producing now is future proofing you to be able to participate in those new mediums.
Yeah, I think you totally hit the nail on the head there. Like, I think there's today's ROI, right? That you build a 3D asset for us that represents a virtual product. That's going to pay off over multiple times, like over the life of that product, over the life of that asset, because the techniques or the way you present this information is just evolving on a daily basis. And so there's a ton that you can actually do by investing now. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Like, how has this, from a content creator's perspective, right? Has your work gotten easier or harder? Like, I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, I can perhaps lend some insight on that. I mean, it's definitely getting harder, and it's always a sliding scale. It never gets easier. The often used example about technological advancements is, re-rendering a movie from the 90s or even 2000s. On today's technology. And people say, well, it would take 45 minutes to render one of the movies again. But that's not the truth. It would take exactly the same amount of time, if not more, to render those same movies, because the quality goes way up, the detail goes way up, the expectations continue to go up as technology, as capabilities go up. But that's not the only factor. Ashley mentioned earlier that Adidas launches 40,000 new products a year or something of that order of magnitude. That doesn't even count digitizing products that they already have, SKUs that they already have. So just imagine creating content at that level of scale. It's hard to do with a team of 100 artists or even 1,000 artists. It needs to, the expectations for physically accurate and realistic content are through the roof, because they need to replace, maybe photography in some contexts. They need to compel users to make accurate purchase decisions, and then they need to do this for scales that were just not even imaginable before. Sometimes that means automation. Sometimes that means for content creators themselves to change the way they work, to adapt to automation, and to leverage as much as they can to think about, how can I do this once and apply it 10,000 times? Because that's the only way to meet this demand.
Yeah, and in addition to those things, something we've seen at Shopify, where we have a really large merchant base that is a range of new businesses all the way to longstanding enterprise businesses, is the content creators who are making for the merchants that are using 3D and AR are gaining a new audience, right? 3D content creators have worked with the film and game industry for decades now, but merchants and commerce is somewhat new. And so there's some deep technical expertise and domain knowledge in those content creators, but that isn't existing there with the merchants. And so there's a bit of a barrier in communication. You know, it's very easy for a merchant to go to their photographer and say, you know, these are the particular changes we want made, or this is what we don't like about a certain photo. But with 3D content, that shared language between the content creators and their customers isn't quite as refined yet. And so that's another barrier that we've seen. And so developing that kind of consistent verbiage, something we're doing in Khronos with some of our asset creation guidelines, will help that communication between merchants and content creators.
We see that a lot in dealing with many of the different clients, hundreds of clients at a time. Having that capability to scale consistency becomes one of the largest issues. And that's part of, I think, the reason that Khronos 3D Commerce was formed in the first place, because of an inconsistency at a global scale, that these guidelines and workflows that we're trying to help define as a group across multiple disparate companies, from the level of large corporations down to small businesses, can actually share the same types of technologies, workflows, and guidelines across all their different business units.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like it's an ecosystem, right? And so there are many different folks who are playing different roles in this ecosystem. And it's not just, you know, a retailer who's kind of working in a silo and kind of, you know, figuring out how to like provide the experience and actually deliver the physical product as well. You're dependent on advertisers, you're dependent on content creators, you're dependent on the actual hardware platforms where these experiences are running, right? And so I think across all these things, like, you need this common language, or you need to agree on the definition of what you are exchanging, right? And so, and that is, those are standards, right? You can use standards to define that. And so let me ask you, all of you this in a different way. So why are these open standards important? Like, maybe you can talk about from your perspectives, like what the value of such an effort provides to you.
Well, I think everybody almost mentioned interoperability here so far in their sentence. And I think it's the fundamental concept of replaceable parts in 3D, like in basically any other industry. Consistency, interoperability are key to go beyond early adopters and to really start them, accelerate the adoption to mass market. So it basically increases the opportunity for all the actors of the ecosystem, and 3D viewer certification that we mentioned today is a perfect example of that, I think.
Yeah, so there was an interesting analogy that that somebody had earlier about DVDs and Blu-rays, and how, like, you know, they've been, if you work in a silo, and if you come up with your own, you know, formats or your own way of like presenting information to end users, you know, it's very likely that you're going to, it may be beneficial to you at that point, but then it's very likely that it's going to fail over the longer period of time, because it's just, you know, if you don't have those standards be open, you're not going to have multiple people be able to access that and actually, you know, modify it and make that better, right? And so, so we spoke about GLTF earlier, and I feel that GLTF has been a great start to something that is the equivalent for JPEG in the imaging world, right? So what's beyond file formats and standards? What are the opportunities with pervasive 3D, and where are things going next?
I can chime in just from, you know, the fashion perspective. I mean, besides 3D helping sell more, which of course is the goal, it's opening up a whole new revenue stream. I mean, we're seeing Gen Z spend their entire allowance buying digital assets in Fortnite and Roblox. And so, you know, 3D opens up a whole new revenue stream for fashion, where people are buying, you know, outfits for their avatar, and having that consistency from game engine to web browser to social platform is what's so essential. So again, you're not recreating the same thing over and over again, but you're able to use that single source of truth 3D file.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well in multiple other different verticals as we get into like food and beverage services, consumer products, right? All of these different areas can actually benefit from pervasive 3D. And if you look at each of the individual verticals together, and you look at this concept of the new metaverse as we go into the future, this oasis, where everything is digital. It's how all of those actually not individually just work, but how they work together, right? Because to recreate these beyond just a single product, it's creating these full entire worlds of products, whether it's an environment where there's a kitchen that actually has clothing and cloth as part of it, and then food products, and then electronic products, and everything, and how they collaborate to make that world more realistic. That's really where open standards and these guidelines and workflows really come into play to make sure that everything is cohesive.
Yeah, I think, Nathaniel, like the democratization of all this is extremely exciting, right? As all that branching out and that growth happens, going back to the return on investment idea, we're going to see the businesses who take advantage of 3D and AR have, higher conversions, lower their returns. You're going to see the people supporting them, a whole, industry of content creators have a whole new set of customers. So that grows that industry as well. And then on the consumer, the end consumer side, again, you have more confidence in the products you're buying, or, a better connection to the values that brands are espousing, right? And so once we kind of get that flywheel spinning, that's when things are really going to get interesting, because that's when the creativity comes into it, right? And we're going to see all new experiences that none of us can even imagine really right now.
And in the kind of like near term and on the tech side, I would say some of the latest web technology and web standards are also going to help reach more users, because as AR and 3D experience get to the browser, the user frictions get considerably lower. Basically, they don't have to download an app anymore, right? So getting into an experience is as simple as clicking a link. And moreover, you can also just send this to your friends and share this and amplify this. So that's also something that should accelerate the adoption.
No, exactly. Like I'm particularly accelerated about how this will infiltrate into design workflows. There's been a lot of development in the last decade about, or even beyond that, to short circuit, someone who designs something to someone who makes something, and making sure that they share models so that changes can be better incorporated. But this accessibility via these new technologies means that people who design something can share in a click, with their end customers, what this could be like before it ever goes into a retail context, and get feedback, get reviews, involve their customers in part of that design process. And this is all thanks to, accessible 3D, emergent technologies, some of the standards that we're working on in this group. So it's all very exciting to see how this is all coming together. Very exciting for us.
Yeah, thanks for all really interesting points. When you think of like how the technology has evolved itself, and you think of how we've gone from mainframes to PCs to laptops, tablets, now phones. We've gone from using like punching cards to tapping on info directly on the screen, and now we're even talking to the computing platform itself, and conversing with it. So it's only going to get more natural. Is kind of where the direction is, and 3D I think is a natural way of representing information, right? So it could be a virtual product that you're looking at. It could be a virtual animal that you just searched for. It could be maybe like Brent was saying, it could be the plans for something that you're constructing. Maybe it's a home, or it could just be the news that you're consuming, right? And so it's all of these different possibilities are what we are referring to when we discuss the idea of 3D everywhere, or pervasive 3D, right? What's important to remember is that when there is 3D at the core of it, this content can fuel incredibly powerful experiences and bring the digital world to life like it's like never before. So there's a lot of work that we have done. There's realism that we've kind of enabled through the different various extensions for GLTF. Optimization has been a significant part of the work that 3D Commerce and Khronos has done, figuring out that things like fitting multiple material variants, representing different product options, for example. That's been a challenge before. That's been solved now. KTX2 is a good example of how textures have gotten, optimizing assets to be delivered online has gotten a lot more quicker and smaller. Agreeing on the definition of a virtual product and how to create the content in the first place through the guidelines that we've established for creating assets. And then with today's announcement, ensuring that content can be created once, it can be experienced anywhere in a consistent manner, which is going to be a significant aspect of enabling this 3D everywhere. So these are all, steps towards making 3D everywhere, and I think we've laid some of the foundation which will go well beyond commerce, in my opinion, and help other industries. And we will continue to work towards making 3D more pervasive. I wanted to thank all the panelists today and the presenters who've joined us. We're just a handful of the larger group, and I wanted to thank all of the different amazing people from the 70 organizations who have contributed to this, and for believing in the cause, and for being a part of this journey that we started over almost like 2 years ago, I think. The spirit of this group has just been incredible. I think that's been the biggest takeaway from me. Some of us are competitors from different industries, and we've come together under one roof to solve a common problem. So it's been very inspiring, to say the least. So thank you all again. Over to you, Neil.
Cool, and thank you to you, Shrenik. I know it's a lot of work to chair a working group like this, and you're doing an awesome job. So now we're going to transition into the Q&A. We have some questions. I'm going to welcome back Ashley and Leonard too. Welcome, guys. It's not too late. Please answer any questions that you have into the Q&A tab, but let's dive into some of the questions we already have. John from John Petty Research has a great question. He says, how do you ensure color calibration of the user's monitor? Will a red Ferrari look the same on my screen as it does on yours? So yeah, screen calibration. Is everything that we're doing for nothing if the screens are not calibrated?
Yeah, I can jump in and just give my 2 cents there. It's a very interesting question, and a very valid concern, right? Because at the end of the day, like if there's so many different variables that are responsible for the final pixel to be shown on your screen, right? It goes through silicon hardware, and then software, the network, the actual display. So there's there are different variables. So what we've decided to do as the 3D Commerce Group is to focus on one aspect of it, one small part of it, right? And we're hoping that the other standards, groups, or other certifications in the different parts of the industry will kind of when it all kind of fits together, that's when we'll be able to solve something like that. And like if you think of like the pixel values that represent or RGB values that represents colors and pixels, right? The way they're read is a lot more standardized, or it's a lot more there's more assurance when they're read that it will be displayed almost accurately, right? We don't have that for 3D today, right? So we're at least scratching the surface there, and so there's a lot more work that needs to be done. So that's
yeah, I mean, I just add, like, that's not unique to 3D. You could say the
Right.
same about videos and still images, right? It's certainly a problem, but it's not as if 3D, if we solve the piece of the puzzle we're trying to solve, which is across viewers, you'll get the same RGB pixel values from the same source inputs, then that defers to that hardware problem that exists for all visual media.
Yep. But yep, maybe Khronos should reach out to some of the other organizations Shrenik says working on this, so we can work together. We have a question from Anthony from Architosh. Hey, Anthony, how are you doing? He says, what kind of standard can be dropped into authoring 3D applications that help GLTF output be compliant with the proposed standard for certified viewers? So this is a good question. It's really talking around GLTF is a delivery format, but how can we align with the tools to make sure people can emit these assets properly? Any comments on that?
I can comment on that, Neil. I think that one benefit of the certification materials that goes beyond just certification is that as you review them, you maybe gain a better understanding of what elements you can control that better prepare your tools or your viewers in order to help artists authors. So even if you're not going to go certify a viewer, or if you're using a software, so you want to configure it, but you're not actually going to submit anything from that, still looking through those materials and understanding what the different settings are that you can utilize can still be a great guideline for what kind of output you want to target in your authoring software. And again, when we talk about different stages in the pipeline, if your authoring softwares are calibrated to this same standard. It's just going to be easier when you go to QA them in a certified viewer.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll also add to that many of the tool vendors have adopted physically based rendering as the de facto standard for product definition. And instead of calling out a specific standard about what that is, I would say that most of the interested tool vendors creating 3D applications are aligning with GLTF and working with GLTF and Khronos Group to define what the future of material definition looks like. So that when we say, here's a new clear coat that makes the car look shiny, we know exactly what that means in the majority of 3D applications that can author that content. So it's not necessarily about a standard that goes into an application. It's about discussing how do we author contents in a way that matches physical reality. And that's usually physically based rendering.
Yep. Any other comments?
Yeah, so I think there is current discussion. The discussions happening in the group today, where we're trying to figure out like is there asset creation guidelines that we built are meant to be a set of guidelines to help you create optimal content for the 3D commerce use case, right? If we can take it one step further and be able to actually specify what type of content needs to be created, like almost like some kind of a recipe, or if there's a way to validate that the assets that you created inside this authoring tool is 3D commerce kind of compliant for a specific use case, let's say for social media or for ads or for viewing room experience, right? I see that developing as an initiative or as a thread that would really help a content creator almost be like, hey, I'm going to export this content for social media use cases and then not have to worry about anything else, right? It's kind of we're almost like specifying the content in a very rigid way that ensures that it will work, universally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. We have one more question from John, more of a logistical question, but it's a good question. Will it be possible to download the models and examine them outside of a browser? And yeah, I can answer this one just very quickly. Yes, the models are publicly available, and they're GLTF models, so you can view them in a multitude of different places and applications. So yes, we'll make sure that the links to the models are included in the information that you have. So looking at the clock, we probably have time for one or two. Let's just try. So social media, we started out this whole journey saying, wait, Instagram and Facebook, people are creating content as well as sharing content. The social media depends on end users creating content. That's really the engine. Do you see end users being enabled to create or scan 3D content, or even use their 3D scans to identify products and generate a buy button on their browser in the future? But is that interesting? Do you see it coming?
I mean, absolutely. I think that's certainly the end game here, right? When everyone can produce content. If you think about in the retail scenario, a great thing to be able to do would be to like take my home with me, right? So we talk about online retail where I want to buy something from home, but like when I'm out and about, I could be either looking at an e-commerce site on my phone while I'm riding the subway or the bus, or I could actually be in a physical retail location and see the product, but I want it in my context, in my home. If I can have a 3D model of my living room and bring that up at will, that would be super great. And that requires every user to be able to create their own content and, have some degree of privacy around it as well. So I think that's coming. And I think, if we watch the progress that we saw on the web, something like GeoCities, or where everyone was able to make a website and play around, that's where, a lot of the great design, a lot of the great UX we now rely on for the web. It was born out of that experimentation from just the general public finally being able to create content. Certainly, with images, memes, and things like that, it's like everyone can put images together really rapidly now, and video as well with your TikToks and your snaps and so on. It's going to happen for 3D for sure. It's just a matter of time.
I agree. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to second what John was saying. There is no the more easier it gets to create content, right? The more content we'll see, right? And so I think it's in fact, like we get to a point where maybe that is the most accurate way to represent a product, right? Is having the real product in front of you, and then you're kind of somehow scanning it, and then you're kind of getting it into your pipeline. And so there's definitely a use case where we are investigating ourselves as well, like especially the use case that John was mentioning, where can I take my home with you, right? And so there's the concept of like inside out scanning versus outside in scanning, I guess. And so those are they're two separate things, but then at the core of it, it is the idea of taking a bunch of pictures and converting it into 3D content directly, right? And so I think it's going to go well beyond commerce. I feel the entertainment industry is kind of like is probably looking at that more deeply than some of commerce industries.
Yep. Okay, cool. So I feel like an NPR presenter. We have 2 minutes, so needs to be fast. But there's an interesting question: how will shopping for apparel get creative with 3D? To go beyond viewing shoes and accessories? Are we going to have realistic clothes and avatars for virtual fitting anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting really exciting. Snapchat is probably the furthest along on Tryon, and we're actually working with them and doing some clothing try-on, which is really exciting. We still have a ways to go with the physics of fabric, making sure that's completely standard. But design programs like Browser and Clo are working on it, but we need to kind of coordinate everyone to make sure, again, it's that consistent same physics definition across the board. And same with avatars. I mean, you've got companies like Genies and others kind of that people, have latched on and built their own avatar, which I find so fascinating, and really living that way. But again, we still have some work to do with the standards there, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we're just beginning to scratch the surface, as Shrenik said. There's lots of problems to solve.
Yeah, if you take clothes as an example, right? Like, or even for fabric on products, right? How do you represent the feel of the product, right? And so that feels like, the client devices are things that will let consumers feel fabrics or the touch or the physicality of a material, right? If you assume that's going to happen, and you clearly like somebody's going to figure that out, and so then the problem becomes like, how do you represent that physicality as bits or in a data structure or something like that? So what is that? Is that a part of the materials itself, definition itself? So I think each industry, as this proliferates across different industries, each industry is going to have their own unique set of challenges. And I think the way we're looking at it is, what is the lowest common denominator amongst all these different industries that we can, is there something that's foundational that will enable most use cases? Let's take that and let's work on that and let's try to make that more universal, right? And so that's been our approach. And these are really, really, I'm super excited about these type of challenges that are coming our way, right? And so, yeah.
Yep. It's like we want 3D everywhere. Right. So we're at the top of the hour. So thank you all to the presenters. That was an awesome session. If we didn't get to the questions, we'll be following up with you one-on-one. And as we wrap up, on the screen are just some of the companies that are working with Khronos, with us towards the 3D everywhere revolution. So as a reminder, there's a list of Khronos contacts in the press kit, and a recording of the session will be available after the embargo lifts. Watch for the survey at the end of the webinar, and let us know if you'd like to book a deeper dive briefing before the announcement goes live on Wednesday. So that's it. Thank you so much for everyone presenting and attending. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks.